Good morning, Tim. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your nonprofit origin story?
Yeah, my name is Tim Lockie. I have been working in nonprofits for over 30 years now. Oh my gosh, that's just crazy. And I was doing that. I was doing that because I cared about the world. Um, a lot of work with youth and youth development, and then I studied economics and came out of economics. Started looking for a job. I was friends with a lot of homeless people in San Francisco. Not a lot, but a few, and I was good friends with them, and one of them one of them knew this place really well, and the way he talked about this place was actually different. Like, he talked about how it was a place that he was respectful of and that they respected him, and his name was Bill. Anyway, so that put them on my grid. So I sent them a resume. They were looking for somebody, and that's when I got hired. And I really mark my origin story in nonprofits at that point in some
Mm,
ways, because it switched from being something I did to something that was a career for me.
I love it.
And so I started in with that nonprofit. Bill, the homeless guy, was one of my references to them, which actually
That's
made a really
enough.
big difference. No, he was such an interesting guy, really, really cool. Tons of Bill stories. Anyway, and that's really where I got my start. It was a global nonprofit that was doing humanitarian aid around the world, and we were, and I ended up just being kind of their tech guy and the assistant to the founder, who was this crazy interesting guy. Still friends with him, and that's really where I got that. That's where I got my start.
I love that. To be fair to anyone listening, we have like a long history of friendship now that very much started from me creeping you on LinkedIn. So you're probably like my first official, like someone I creeped on LinkedIn who then became my friend, which is how I force people to like me now. But, you know, I just admired the heck out of how you were positioning being a consultant to nonprofits, but with clearly just their best interest in mind. And I feel like you really hit that much earlier than most. I mean, the name of your organization changed from Now It Matters, which was a very cool name to begin with,
Thank
into the
you.
human stack, which I think, is so appropriate because, we know it's about the people, right? The tech is another whole thing, but it's the people behind the tech that always end up mattering most.
And I think that's what I saw in multiple areas of my work, is that we would get so focused on whatever thing there was, right? So there's a
Yeah.
lot of like, and this is one of the reasons I love Mallory Erickson's work so much, because she's somebody who knows that fundraising is important, but the fundraiser is actually at the center of that. And
Yeah.
so regulating nervous system is actually critically important for success in fundraising, right? And the more I would go and see the work being done, I kept observing organizations that were truly up to good things, but they'd lost their sense of who they were doing this for, and that they were part of it. And
Yeah.
this organization that I worked for was not like that. We were sending wealthy people from US and other parts of the world to live in like Shoshinguve in in South Africa. Um, and 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 they were some of the first white people that ever lived in a township, right?
Yeah.
And so we were doing cultural training on how to show up fully aware of who you are, accepting your privilege, and not thinking that you were there to change everything, but that you were there to become part of the fabric of that community, that you had
Yeah.
to be invited in. And so as I was doing this work, even though I was expanding in the tech areas in that organization and was causing a little bit of a tech revolution for them, what they were doing for me was confirming over and over that people, relationships, and connection were the most important part of our work, and everything else was part of making that happen. And when I got into tech, I feel like I forgot that for a while.
Mm.
And that I really thought if we could just get the bits and bytes to work, Like it would just, raise more money, do more good. And that's not untrue, but only to the degree that we were connected. And I don't mean I mean that in the back office sense, like really well connected in the back office so that there was this frame of community that you could build off of. Um,
Yeah,
so
absolutely. I mean, there's lots of ways to look at health, right? Health
yeah.
metrics are not as simple as going, well, my heart is healthy, but my liver is failing. Well, guess what? That's still going to be a big problem for your heart, right? Like those things are all connected together. And I think so often nonprofit staff are looked at like this limb you could technically separate off and everything else works. And you're like, yeah, but you're going to suffer without that limb, right? Like it's not the same. And maybe it's not a limb. Like, what if your nonprofit staff is your heart and everything else can be perfect around it, but without it being healthy, it's going to affect everything around it. It just can't be looked at as a separate piece of nonprofit. But we tend and through many conversations I've had with so many people through the Hive and otherwise, you just can see that disconnect has happened. And it's often smaller nonprofits with people directly on the ground interacting with clients on the daily and frontline workers, even though they're burnt out for a variety of other reasons, compassion fatigue because of a variety of other reasons, they actually realize why their mission is important
Yeah.
and how critical each member of their team is to make that mission possible, in a way that sometimes you get behind the scenes and you forget, right? Or it's just not in your face enough to remember.
I think that that's really true. I saw that over and over and experienced that because I was even at this organization I was at. Um, I I was part of one of their divisions, right? And so
Mm.
there's kind of the mothership that had a totally different feel and a different brand than we had. And so when I would interact with the back office staff in that organization, which where I developed a bit of a reputation of never having my receipts in on expense reports and all that kind of stuff. But I could see how the same issues we dealt with just scaled up, and they dealt with the same things. And I agree. There can be a lack of appreciation for the people making it happen in the back office. And where you find that lack of appreciation, you're going to find that lack of sense of appreciation in other areas of the organization. So part
Yeah.
of why I think the human stack is so important is that it's not just it's not just a human. It's not just about upskilling one human and making them really good at their job. It is about the space between the humans. It's about the connection that we have with them and our proximity to them. That's what's so important, that they're in a healthy community that is working together. And I feel like that community is one of the reasons I like you so much, and what you're doing is because you get how powerful community is, not at accomplishing things, but in creating healthy humans. And those
Yeah.
humans can then go accomplish things. And so I like the way that you understand the foundational nature of community and how central it is for our health.
It's a building block that we all kind of
Yeah.
I think we all got pushed away from it, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, I could
Right.
go on a rant about capitalism until the cows come home, but I'm not going to today. But you can see how we've broken it down over time. And it's time to start building it up to accomplish the things we need. And nowhere is that more clear than in the social impact space. So we could continue with all this for too long. So I'm gonna ask you favorite thing about working in the social impact space.
Yeah, I what I love about the social impact space, one, the nature of the people that are in it. They're in this economy because they are trying to maximize an output of impact rather than an output of profit, right? Like that's embedded in the name, even.
Yeah.
And why I think that is truly powerful is that there's a willingness to go put themselves into a place that is making the world better. you
Mm,
know we used to go camping, and my mom would just drill it into us: we're going to leave this place better than when we found it.
nice.
And I feel like that is, that is the overall, uh, that's the flavor of this space is we're out to leave this place better than when we found it, against all odds, right? Like, all
Absolutely.
of the missions out there, the really amazing missions out there are not going to hit what they are trying to do, right? Like there will still be hunger, there will still be war and famine and all of these horrible social and societal issues, and still nonprofits are out there saying we're going to go do what we can to make this world better than when we found it. I find that really powerful.
Yeah.
And when I get up and start working on my day, these are the things that do keep me moving forward.
Yeah.
So that's why I like working in this space.
Hey, you gotta it's a good reason to get out of bed in the morning when I think you have that drive and fire for social impact, right? And you know your work has meaning behind it. And I think we're all pulling for that idea right now
Yeah.
and feeling that connection. Okay, that's great. And now the fun question, challenges in the nonprofit space, things that you have seen, experienced in your work, heard about through your consulting and support of nonprofiteers. What are some of the challenges that you've seen over the years?
Yeah, I ended up working in the tech side of things because I kept finding over and over that when I could unlock someone's ability to use technology more effectively as a team, as an individual, they would go further and do more with the same. Nothing changed. They did not go buy new tech. They did not, they didn't have to go get a degree. It was sometimes as simple as showing somebody how to do a search on a Chrome page instead of scrolling for miles and miles, right? Like
Yeah,
very simple things would create a huge leverage point. And after studying economics, if you can find those, what I realized is you can go so much further and create a lot more value. And I kept seeing over and over that tech is this cheat code for impact that is locked behind behavior, but people think it's locked behind budget and resourcing. And so I started the human stack just to show we can unlock enormous amounts of leverage and potential just by changing our beliefs and our behavior.
yeah,
And so I think that there are challenges everywhere, and I think the challenges are growing. One of the areas that we can unlock and do something about those challenges, and the place that I can do the most good is in this leverage point of technology and AI and mindset. And so that's where I find that's where I'm working on, uh, the area that I feel like I can do the most good with. I don't think it's the only challenge. I want to be really clear. I think that there
yeah,
are challenges everywhere, but I do think this one is unique because you don't have to do anything more than change your behavior and your mindset, and you'll
yeah.
unlock a lot more.
Yeah, getting rid of that limiting beliefs about technology, right?
Mhm.
Which many of us hold.
Right.
And our friend Lori from Brokers of Good talks quite a bit about limiting beliefs in nonprofit and how she often sees that holding people back from building out corporate partnerships. This corporation would never want to work with us, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
but why not? Like, have you, and she finds that so very similar. I love how applying that to technology. Okay, so my next question is how has peer support influenced, positively influenced your time working in the nonprofit space?
This is such a great question to ask on this week because, so candidly, I have been having a rough go at it for the last couple of weeks. And so I'm pretty open about mental health challenges. I struggle from chronic depression and at the same time am a raging optimist. And those actually work together just fine. It does not, I don't understand it,
I
but it
love
works fine. And and in Bozeman, I don't have that many friends and peers here. I
that.
have
Yes.
a lot more virtual friends that are true friendships, like with you,
Mhm.
where I text people, I touch base with people. But there's a guy here, he was in my wedding. I've known him since I was 19. There's 3 of us that are really close like that. I reached out to him this week, and he works in a very different wing of the nonprofit space than I do.
Okay.
And I reached out this week. No, he reached out to me. He was like, "How are you doing?" I think he knew that I was not doing well. And so we had coffee the other day. And okay, admittedly, this guy's really smart, right? But what it reminded me of is um no, he reminded me who I am,
Mm.
right? And I'd lost the thread on that. And when you start to ask identity questions, there are some places where you can't find your way back. It's like you're in a
Yeah.
blizzard without the rope to the door, right? You're just wandering around in this whiteness of who am I? And and I feel like all of us go through phases in our life where we're doing that. And sometimes it's not that extreme. Sometimes it's not at all a blizzard. Sometimes, you're just out and about.
Yeah.
And when you find people and peers that can help you remember who you are, what you're doing, why you're up to it, the next challenge, the next thing. I feel like that's part of what makes us uniquely human is our need for other people to speak into our identity, to speak into who we are, so that we can keep finding our way back to who we are and stay there. So for me, that has happened. Like that's an extreme example with my friend Mike. But I'm just thinking about like talking with Rob Green on the Hive, who I met in a Hive chat. And as soon as the chat was over, I was like, "Here's my Zoom. Let's keep going." We talked for another hour. Right? Amazing individual, really, really amazing. And in that first 10 minutes of talking with him, I knew this is my people. This guy gets it. And he gets a part of it that I hadn't thought of before. So I feel like that's important. And
Yeah.
that he's in tech, so he gets that. But then, I've talked with other people in Hive chats who are not in tech, and it has been incredibly impactful also. And I realized, okay, this is also my people, and they're working on a different part of the impact space, but just as legitimately. And so I feel like what happens with peers, and I know you're not asking me about Hive chats,
That's
but
okay.
the reason I'm bringing it up is because it is like speed friending, where people help you remember who you are and why you're doing this. And I find that really, really critical for my sense of balance and ballast to know where I am. And so I find peer support really, really important, and in some ways hard to not hard to find, but hard to find in concentrated doses. And
Yeah.
Hive chats are one of those places where it's just you show up, you have a conversation, you meet someone you may not have known before, and you remember, this is why I'm doing this. This is who I am. This is what I'm about.
Yeah. I I think it's a great space I find for myself to reignite some passion for things that, I mean, we're both very similar in kind of a founder. There's all this marketing happening in the background. There's the reality of invoicing and things that I would rather not be doing. And we both have talked about how we'd rather just talk to other people all day. And
Yeah.
that's a blessing and a curse when you have to get other things done. But I, you know, my why for this work, for what I'm doing for this community, for social impact, it's an easy reminder every Thursday because I talk to somebody or I get these lovely messages from humans. And I know you get those messages as well when people have these technology breakthroughs and they have that behavioral mindset shift. And, just giving yourself that moment to remember why you're doing the work you do is it feels ridiculous, but it's almost like having one of those like posters up on your wall that are supposed to be those motivational ones, except for you get to have a real person who
Yeah.
is like telling you, like, I was saying to someone the other day who I was chatting with on Hive, who's a Hive member, you know, she was describing her work and she's like, well, yeah, it's not really that great, or she said something like that. And I was like, I'm going to repeat back to you what you just said is your work. That's incredible. I didn't even know there
Yeah.
were organizations out there doing that. And so like sometimes we just need someone to, yeah, to respond back to kind of go, that's really cool. Like, tell me more about this, right? Because you're not going to do that inner monologue to yourself to go, this is amazing. Look at the work you're doing. Like, I mean, I don't know about you. I don't do that to myself. Instead, I'm always like, there's more. I should do this, right? And sometimes we
Yep.
need to like sink into going, this is what's cool and this is amazing.
I feel like we are, um it's such a it's almost miraculous the way that words can transcend distance, they can transcend
Yeah.
identity even, and bring us uh back to who we are, what we're doing. Um and I don't just mean that in a touchy-feely way. I actually feel like, I spend a lot of time thinking about the difference between family systems and performance systems, right?
Yeah.
So, family systems, the way that you belong there is through acceptance. That's the mechanism. You should not need to earn your way into your family. Like that is not how that is set up.
Yeah.
And then in performance systems like, the Olympics, if you break your leg, you're an alumni instantly, right? If you're on the track team, you break your leg, you're an alumni. You're not on that team anymore, not because you're not accepted, but because there's an accountability. That's the method. You're accountable to actually do something and get something done. And I feel like that is critical in this area as well, where we're not just saying what we're doing is important, we're also talking about how to get it done more efficiently, how
Yeah.
to find the resources to do it. Where is that grant? How are you applying for this next thing? How are you getting your program into more schools? How are you scaling that? Now that you got that grant, how are you scaling? What does that look like? Where are the choke points on that efficiency and efficacy? And those are the other parts of the conversation. And so when I say remember who I am, it's not just remembering I'm a good person or, altruism, whatever. That's not it. What it is no, I'm here to get a job done. We want to actually make this place better than when we found it. And to do that, we have to perform, and we need to perform efficiently, effectively with each other in community, working together. And I feel like that's the part of community we forget, because there is an acceptance factor. I find the accountability factor even more intoxicating. It's one of the reasons I love hanging out with you is you are hey, this has been great to talk about. What are we going to go do? Let's go get stuff done. And I just love that. And that I'm naturally drawn to people who are like, yes, great. We're friends. Now let's go do something. And what are we doing? How is this working?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, it's a very easy friendship to evolve. And I think for myself, so much of the Hive has just been finding people, more people like you, like for me, where the connection was quick and instantaneous. And I find that happens a lot. I mean, my biggest challenge is trying to keep up with everybody on, in messaging. I'm just like, how am I going to pull this off? But great
How
problems.
are you pulling that off? Okay, sorry. Like, I'm just gonna reverse the mic for a second. No, 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 no. There are a lot of people hopping in. The Hive is a happening place, right? Like, how
Yeah.
are you keeping up with that?
Some days better than others. Some days better than others. I think that is the one piece I would highlight about community is that yes, there's an acceptance piece of being accepted into community, and there's some natural communities that evolve. And I mean, I actually have a family reunion coming up this weekend. And I have some relationships that, you know, of varying degrees of closeness. And, I have a relationship from my childhood, and we were very close until we were in our early 30s, that I'm excited to see him. The relationship is still not the same because we're not connecting the same way as we were when we were 30, as we are both now as parents. And that's okay. There's still some core piece there. And I look at the Hive sometimes and go, there's a core piece that really forms quickly in those relationships because you have a common background, you have common desires, you're both passionate people who care about making the world a better place. So there's already this core. But if you want that relationship to go beyond a just this level of general acceptance and community, that's very different, right? So when we talk about people who are super engaged, engagement requires at least a little bit of fire all the time. And that is the piece that I think so many people get wrong about community, is not understanding that people need to be seen in order to feel like they're part of something, right? Like, and if they don't feel seen in a moment or in a week, or maybe, for some people it's enough to just have one Hive chat a month. That's a great amount of engagement for them. That's exactly how much they want to engage with this community. There are others who I talk to very, very frequently, and that's not a problem because they're also giving back that same energy all the time, right? To me as well. And so I think community is as powerful as the energy we often put into it as well. And if you think community is a place to coast, that's there's
Yes,
no coasting in
no place
community.
to
I should,
coast.
I should have that as my tagline. There's no coasting in community.
I like it.
Okay, so you've already highlighted some of the Hive members and chats you've had. I guess what have you gotten out of the Hive during this time? And you were one of the original people who kind of signed up, and I won't say you were reluctantly supportive, but you were supportive and skeptical is the wording I'm going to
Oh
use of
my
this idea when I first proposed it.
gosh. When you pitched it to me, I okay, first of all, let me just say I will always be a Tasha fan.
Oh, thank
Like,
you.
I don't care what you're up to, who you are, I believe in so much that I will be there. I'll show up. All not all ideas are equivalent though. And when you first told me
Sure.
about this, I got to say it was breaking a lot of the rules that I felt like you needed to have in place for something to be successful.
Mm,
And the most obvious one is scale. You can't scale you can't scale small conversations. And the second one is I did not think people would find enough meaning in them to pursue them, right? Like
yeah,
and so when you told me about the idea, I thought that sounds like a logistical nightmare that seems like it's not going to create enough meaning for people to really engage. And I don't see how this is going to scale really to and so that said, and I don't think I said any of those things by the way.
no,
I
you
think
were
what
very just polite, and you were like,
right, yeah,
"Oh, that's
exactly.
interesting."
Right. Oh, I'm sure I was. I hope I wasn't patronizing, which
No,
I'm
you weren't.
very
You weren't.
yeah.
You were
Okay.
just, and you had
I
some
was
like technical things that you were going, okay, but what about this? And what, like,
yeah. Right.
things that I probably, yeah, needed to hear also at the time.
Yeah. And I am so glad to be proven wrong on those points and surprised. And I I feel like failing is a skill that you can learn. And
Yep.
I've learned it by practicing it a lot and being wrong so many times. It just almost doesn't matter to me anymore. I just want to I want to get past the wrong and into the learning, right?
Nice.
I was totally wrong about all of those points. Maybe not logistics, although you're figuring it out.
Yeah.
And and that actually is not going to be that big of a limit. The scale though, it reminds me of photography, what my brother taught me about photography. If you want to take a picture of a building, zoom in on a cool doorknob or the this cool thing in an elevator. Don't zoom out, zoom in. If it's really big, zoom in. And that's what you figured out with the Hive is that instead of zooming out to the size of the community, you want to zoom in to the interest of that person. And as soon the first one I was in, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I was totally wrong. This is totally going to work. Absolutely going to work because exactly what you said, people want to belong. They want to be known. And in a one-on-one conversation, you get half the mic time, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
so you're showing up to a place where you get to talk and be known.
yeah. Well, and I think in this industry, especially, and I mean, uh, your lovely partner Jenny, and you've surrounded yourself with so many other wonderful people. But there are times where, when you talk to people who are outside of social impact, they think it's just nuts. Like, this is what you're deciding to do. This is where you're dedicating your time, your
Yeah.
energy, for less dollars than you could do. I've had so many people who are just like, "You really enjoy sales. Why aren't you working at like a car dealership? You'd kill it." And I'm like, "Because I couldn't care less about cars. Like, that's just like
Yes.
something I don't care about." Right. So,
Right.
I mean, there's so much of choosing this industry, the people who are in it, that being known by other people in this industry is something special, because having that connection where someone else gets sometimes the sacrifice and the meaning behind it, and your passion doesn't just happen when you talk to just anyone, right, on the street. It's not gonna, you know, I could have 15 conversations at a coffee shop and maybe only come across one other person who would understand what I was talking to, and I have to go out and look for them. Like, we're just gonna set you up with someone else who gets it, and what can happen when, um, just right off the bat, the conversation can go so much faster.
I think because I got a peek behind the curtain on how you set up the conversations, and I could see the degree to which you are tracking all of this, both in your mind and in tech, I think that is maybe something people don't realize on why it works. Is that you're really thinking through how who can this person talk to and have a really good interaction. And I think you forecast that really well. I think it's one of your gifts is to know, I think that these two people will actually have a really good conversation together.
Yeah.
And I think that you know the quality of that interaction is at a core level why people are going to keep coming back. Do they feel understood? Do they feel accepted? Is the work that they're doing understood and appreciated? All of those things you can get at in a half-hour chat in a way that you can't in a big Zoom room where where there are too many people for the number of minutes, right?
Yeah.
um and so I just feel like, yeah, so I'm very glad to be wrong. I love I love what you're doing and why it works, and I'm surprised at how few people are realizing what I think you've uncovered here.
It's a best kept secret for now. So
It is, yeah.
I'm going to last thing I'd like you to finish up with is, how can people get in touch with you, and just a little bit more, I guess, what's your quick blurb about the human stack, and what can people expect when they're engaging with you and your content?
So thehumanstack.com is where you can find me. I'm building out some courses. I'm really excited about two of them that I'm going to be putting out in the next few months. One of those is an AI for anyone course. So if you're new to AI, if you haven't done much with it and you're just a little bit hesitant on that, or you've used ChatGPT twice and you're like, okay, I get this, maybe this is the course for you. You'll learn more in 60 minutes than you will in 60 days on your own. So that's a course that I'm putting out. I'm also putting out after that. So late this summer, should launch around Fundraising AI Summit, a playbook for nonprofit leaders who don't know how to have that conversation with their team about AI and AI
Nice.
policy and efficiency versus ethics that is coming up, and just makes it makes AI kind of a don't ask, don't tell place right now.
Yeah.
We want to create a do ask and please show us how you're using it instead. So so those are two courses that are coming out. I really work hard to create accessible content for everyday people in the impact space to understand how technology can help them be better thems and also help the missions that they're accomplishing.
Awesome. That's super exciting. Well, thank you so much, Tim, and always nice chatting with you about everything, and
Likewise,
appreciate all your
always a
support
pleasure.
for what we're building. Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks.